Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida for this commercial partnership announcement between NASA and ATK. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. We'll hear a few comments and then take questions here at Kennedy and if we have anyone on the phone line. Our speakers today are Ed Mango, NASA's Commercial Crew Program Manager, Kent Rominger, Vice President of Strategy and Business Development for ATK Aerospace Systems, and John Schumacher, Atrium EADS North America. Mr. Mango.
Thank you, Kendra. So I'd like to welcome everybody here today, and it's a great day to talk about Commercial Crew today. Overall, the Commercial Crew program is going very well. We're making progress in many different areas of how we're proceeding with the program. As you know, CCDEV2 was kicked off a number of months ago, and we're making very steady progress with that. We are on time and on budget across the board on our milestones that we have projected. Today, we want to announce that we are starting a new unfunded SAA with ATK. An SAA is an approach in which we both share data and we both share ideas to move forward with a particular design or a particular concept. We believe that this effort that we start today will go through next spring and will allow ATK and the Commercial Crew team, our team of managers, engineers, and safety folks, to explore the Liberty design that ATK is wanting to talk about. We will have a series of milestones over the next 6 or 9 months in which we want to talk about their design. We're going to talk about their requirements, how they plan to implement their requirements against their design, talk about the capabilities of the Liberty system as a whole, and understand how they plan to work it in the international approach. I personally think this international approach is an outstanding opportunity to understand what is best about individual companies and to put those together to make the best capability for the world. We also want to explore if this capability can be used in a Commercial Crew type of purpose, which for us is to trying to get crew to the International Space Station and low Earth orbit by the middle of the decade. I look forward to expanding the knowledge base both for NASA as well as for ATK and their partners. NASA will bring the expertise that we have on board with the Commercial Crew program. We'll bring that expertise to bear to help ATK and give them our expertise. And at the same time, we want to discuss what ATK and EADS want to think about in this Liberty system and work with them. We look forward to this cooperation. I also like now to introduce Kent, who's going to talk a little bit more about the Liberty system.
So thank you, Ed. And first of all, we're delighted to be here. Very much looking forward to this opportunity to work with NASA, the experts in human spaceflight in the world. What I want to start off with is I'd like to show a video. It's only about 50 seconds. So it'll pictorially show us what Liberty is. So if we'll please roll that video. So here's a picture of Liberty, the first stage, and it is an evolved rocket motor from the space shuttle boosters that were used. The second stage comes as part of the Ariane 5 system, the core. But we're looking at a vehicle flying right now because both pieces of this system have extensive flight experience with very impressive records. As a matter of fact, just last week, we had a test firing on Development Motor 3, that 5 segment that's the first stage. And now we're looking at the upper stage engine, which has 45 consecutive successful flights and is part of a system that is the most successful commercial launcher on the planet. So, but lastly here, we see the launch infrastructure right here at the Kennedy Space Center. This is where we intend on launching Liberty from. You know, the real bottom line is we want to be Florida's launch system provider with our Liberty vehicle. A couple of more points when you say, hey, well, what is Liberty? You know, why would I want Liberty? And the reason why you want it is we believe Liberty offers the safest, most reliable means of putting our crew on orbit. And when I say our crew on orbit, we have the capability with 44,000 pounds of lift into LEO to launch any of the commercial crew provider vehicles that are out there to date. What's really fascinating with this is how well the upper stage matches up with our first stage. You would think they would have been designed to go with each other, but in fact they weren't. But they made up probably as well, if not better, than if we intentionally tried to design it that way. The other thing that I'd like to emphasize is in 2010, President Obama signed in a new space policy. And part of that space policy, one of the changes from the previous one was the fact that it said we want to expand our international cooperation in spaceflight. So we are taking what we believe is a very good relationship from the space station with ESA, with the European Space Agency, and NASA. And that legacy, we just are involving it into the commercial world. So if you look at our Liberty system, NASA developed the first stage, the 5-segment booster. The upper stage was developed by ESA, the European Space Agency. 2 commercial companies now are taking that and applying it commercially, so we feel very fortunate to have what we believe is a very rigorous design, unlike any other out there that was designed to lift humans from the start. And we're applying commercial processes and practices to it to offer it at the best possible value for our nation's space program. The other thing is there's a reason I'm sitting here at the Kennedy Space Center. We, ATK, asked to come into Kennedy Space Center because this is going to be the home of Liberty. Clearly, the infrastructure, the Kennedy Space Center right here is set up perfectly to enable us to process Liberty, launch Liberty. So not just use the infrastructure, but the people. And the people here at the Kennedy Space Center. So we wind up bringing jobs into Florida and using the existing expertise that we've developed over the last 5 decades. And to my knowledge, we are, if not the only one of the launchers looking at really taking advantage of this great capability that is here today. What I would like to do at this point now is just tell you that the ATK team is greatly enhanced by our international partner, and to represent them sitting next to me is John Shoemaker. So, John, it's all yours.
Thanks, Kent. Just a couple of remarks. I can't tell you how excited we are to be here today. And on behalf of ASTRIAM and EADS North America, I'd first like to thank Ed Mago and the NASA team for their leadership in this commercial crew development program. And to our partners, ATK, we think it's an honor to be on this team with ATK. They had the innovative look almost a year ago to come to ASTRIAM and talk to them about could we put the best of U.S. and European launch vehicle capability together in a tremendously, as Kent just said, what we think is the most competitive, most capable, very safe, very reliable vehicle for commercial crew transport, and to do that right here at the Kennedy Space Center. So if I don't jump out of my chair, I can tell you we are very excited. For us, the partnership builds on over a decade of experience that at ASTRIAM, and you've probably seen it here at the Cape and at Johnson, ASTRIAM North America has worked on space shuttle and space station and in several different aspects of space station. So we see this as a natural progression and part of the growing cooperation between the U.S. and Europe in space capabilities. As Kent spoke to, it uses the Ariane 5 core stage as an upper stage with at its heart the Vulcan 2 engine, which has flown 45 times successfully, a tremendously successful and capable flight-proven system. We also think we bring the experience of operating the Ariane system, the commercial aspects of that, the commercial aspects of going into that larger marketplace, and some of the ideas about modularity, innovation, and to bring that competitive force into the whole discussion. And we and ATK have had a really good time talking that through and how does Liberty best advance that. So just in sum, I would tell you we think this brings together the best of U.S. and European launch vehicle capabilities into the most competitive vehicle in this commercial trade space. So again, thanks very much for the opportunity and the privilege to be here today.
Thank you. We'll take questions from the room. We do have reporters on the phone line. We'll start here at Kennedy, and then we'll take as many questions as we can from the phones. Let's start over here. Once the microphone comes your way, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you're addressing your question. We'll start with Jay.
Jay Barbary with NBC. I have a 4-parter. Should I ask it in one part, or do you want me to throw all the 4s out there?
Yeah, let's start one at a time.
Okay. First, Kent, Will you be able, with this agreement, to use the facilities, the VAB and crawler and launch pad as you did with Ares 1? Do you have that type of agreement?
So yeah, we've got a couple agreements in work, actually multiple, Jay, kind of an overarching agreement and then individual Space Act agreements that we've been working with the various NASA centers and people to, in fact, utilize as much infrastructure as it makes sense. So the vertical assembly building, our operations, our concept of operations absolutely does. We have the upper stage being shipped in, just like today on the Ariane 5, it's shipped out of Europe down to the equator for launch. It'll be shipped in here. The first stage will come in on rail like it did for the space shuttle. They'll go to the vertical assembly building where they get stacked, assembled, and the spacecraft will come in as well. And then out of the VAB, it'll roll out on a launch pad out to the launch facility. So yes, I guess is the answer, that is the plan.
How many jobs do you estimate that it'll create for KSC here?
Yeah, you know, our best guess initially is around 300 jobs that it'll bring in, 300, yes, to utilize, that it'll create here in Florida.
And you know, you've said in the past that Liberty is already human rated, as is the Ariane 5 stage. Is it more that you have to do, unlike other people who are going to be launching here, none of them are certified? Is there more that you have to do to certify Liberty to carry a crew?
So, yeah, and Jay, you know, that one's very near and dear to my heart, ensuring that we have a very reliable and safe vehicle. And if you look at the human rating standards, they are pretty onerous. And in fact, you have to start from conception to have a system that meets those. And the first stage absolutely does, because it was designed with those in mind. The second stage as well, out of Astrium, that Ariane 5 was designed to lift Hermes, a space plane. And make no mistake, NASA's human rating requirements have been out there, and so people around the globe look at those requirements, and they don't necessarily have to design to those requirements, but they are taken into account. So the Ariane 5, our core stage, our upper stage, was in fact designed initially to carry humans. It has not been flying that way today, so, but we use the word scarred. The system is scarred with various paths, redundancies, structure, meets those human rating requirements or is very close to them. So I believe we have a unique capability when it comes to human rating, but even larger than that, the system itself. The real beauty of it is it's extremely simple. And if we look at the rocket, it's got one engine for first stage, one engine for second stage, and you're on orbit. So the philosophy is if you minimize the things that can go wrong, that can cause you to have a bad day or not get to orbit, you know, and if we look at recent failures, Soyuz Progress, that was the third stage that resulted in the Progress not getting into orbit. On Liberty, that's not a problem because we don't need a third stage. The design is so simple that, in fact, we get into orbit dependent just on two engines.
And for my final four-parter, for Ed, back in 1956, Von Braun rolled Redstone number 29 out to the launch pad. He had a satellite on board and he was going to launch it. He was stopped by the Department of Defense. He was told to take 29 back to the hangar. He took it back. He later launched our first satellite. But for him to be given an opportunity to launch that first satellite, he had to go through watching Vanguard fail and 2 or 3 other steps fail after the simple rocket put up our first satellite following a simple rocket that put up the shuttles, put up the Soviets' first satellite. Now the question here is this: suppose that Liberty works here, it's already been out here, the facilities are out here, suppose it's ready to take crews back to the space station. If we got the problems that we have with the Soyuz 3 rocket, is NASA going to push for them to go ahead and do it, or are they going to have to sit back and wait for these other rockets to get ready, man-rated, and go? Will there be any influence from the agency to fly the first crews possible to the International Space Station?
See, a good question. I would say that for this effort we're doing under this SAA, we're going to look at the capabilities of this Liberty system. And yes, both components have flown before, and they both have good histories in the past. I think we have to look at the integration of those pieces and how that mission profile will look for Ascent, and then we will look at that from a technical standpoint. What Commercial Crew program wants to do is we don't want to be in the business of integrating a spacecraft with a launch vehicle. So we're very interested in helping ATK and their partners in exploring what capability they do have. And then we encourage them to go work with spacecraft providers, create those partnerships, and then come forward and say now they have a solution. And whenever that solution can meet our requirements and they can deliver crew on orbit safely, then that is the one that we'll go use as soon as we can.
Irene?
Thanks. Irene Klotz with Reuters, probably for Kent. Can you talk a little bit about the scope of this Space Act agreement? In other words, this 300 people that you said would be hired, is that envisioned, like now, since your agreement is signed, or were you talking more in the future? And also, if there's any changes between this contract that you've signed and what you had proposed to NASA under the CC Dev, is this kind of like your CC Dev 2 proposal reborn in a new arrangement?
Yeah, so I'll start with your second question first. And yes, the Space Act agreement was lined out and started initially as a CC Dev 2 SAA. The one difference is the funding level. And so the milestones that we have in there are appropriate with where we are today and where we're moving. The fact is we'd been a little further along with a funded agreement than with an unfunded, but the milestones, the cooperation back and forth with NASA, I envision will be very, very similar to what it would have been on a CC Dev 2 award. So we're very excited to be working with these folks. And the jobs, yes, the jobs will come on incrementally as we work through the program. With the majority of them probably about a year from flight is processes and vehicle processing starts coming into Florida, and then it'll be full up, within a couple of months of that first launch for the processing.
So are you saying that with this Space Act agreement you're actually planning on a launch, and if so, when do you anticipate that would occur?
So this Space Act agreement is through March, so it's a relatively short period, and the philosophy was, I believe, and I'm probably let Ed talk, but I think the philosophy was just like CC Dev 2, it will end, and then the next set of agreements will be put in place, IDC, the Integrated Design Contract. So we are absolutely leveraging this to advance as far as we can, and then competing on IDC. And as far as a launch date, that will be determined by funding profiles and progress that is made. But what I can tell you is, as I look at systems out there, particularly spacecraft systems and our launcher, I believe that we are ahead of all the systems, so we can be ready when the space vehicles are ready to fly.
See, and I guess I will add to that, the whole concept of CC Dev 2 was to mature capabilities and move forward on progress towards Commercial Crew systems. And so this unfunded agreement now we have with ATK is part of that CC Dev 2 profile, if you look at it as an overall portfolio of what we want to go do. As it being unfunded, from the taxpayer standpoint, really the taxpayer is helping to make sure the NASA team can support the discussions, and then ATK is using their internal capabilities in order to go fund their half of the agreement. At this particular point, it's a great way to do business and explore the capabilities that ATK has with the Liberty system. This whole idea of CC Dev 2 will come to an end towards next spring and summer of next year, and then we'll move into the next phase. What this helps by starting today with ATK is it helps them move their system and moves their system progress forward, so that then they can work to compete in the next round if they wish to do so.
Okay. Bill.
Bill Hurley, CBS, with two quick ones from me. I want to make sure I understand this, Kent. What you're saying is that you're going to study this. You and NASA are both going to look at this system for the next 6 to 9 months or however long that lasts, and then there's another decision point coming. And if you guys don't get money from NASA at that point, is that the end of this, or would you keep going beyond there on your own?
Yeah, so Bill, what I was really trying to say is we are working, as we have been, with the Liberty, maturing the Liberty system towards ultimately a launch. NASA and now the Space Act Agreement enables us to work much more closely with NASA and vice versa along that goal. And it really isn't, digital that either A, we do continue or don't continue with an IDC award, for example. Our goal is to continue working Liberty. And again, it's paced by funding amongst other things. But for us, this Space Act Agreement is very exciting because it enables NASA to gain more insight into Liberty, which I think is a great thing, and it also enables us to leverage all this expertise that's here.
One more from me. What about, how does liability work in the sense when you have loaded fuel segments in a government building like the VAB? Just in general liability for a commercial operation, whereas in the past that's always been, I guess, self-insured by the government if there was a mishap or something. And B, if everything really did go well and this really did march down the road, when would the earliest be that we could see actual flight hardware out there on the pad getting ready to go on a test flight, for example?
So, Ed, you want to take that first on the liabilities? I'd answer it, but.
Okay, that is a very good question. We are working the solutions for commercial entities coming into government facilities. That happens, that's not something that's new to Commercial Crew. That happens quite a lot, happens even today at this center, but it also happens at other centers and other government facilities where commercial entities come into those facilities. When they enter into agreements or contracts or whatever the right mechanism is, the rules for liability are then laid out. And for Commercial Crew, those rules are also being laid out. And as we move into the next phase, you'll see how those rules will be set up so that the liability for NASA on our government facilities is taken care of either by NASA or by the partner, the commercial partner, and that might be in there. But it is unique to each particular center and each particular facility. It depends what else is going on in the facility. It depends when NASA might need the facility for other activities. So all that plays into the mix. So there isn't a clear-cut answer except to say that liability of government facilities is very important, obviously, to NASA. And so we will be rolling out what those rules are over as we move into the next phase.
And if I could just add to that, matter of fact, the last several weeks there have been meetings to that very issue, Bill, and what I've seen is based on history and what we've learned over the years, NASA is reevaluating and leveraging a lot of data to make a pretty informed decision so that if it works commercially, they are enabling it. So, hats off to everything we see going. To your question about, hey, when can we fly? We've kind of always been on record of saying, hey, we can meet an IOC in 2015. And again, when the spacecraft are ready, we will be ready.
You say 2014?
15 for IOC, 2015 for IOC. Sorry, that's. I get told that all the time, Jay. So.
Todd.
Todd Halverson with Florida Today. I have a couple, if I could. So far in CCDEV-1 and CCDEV-2, NASA has invested primarily in the development of piloted spacecraft that would actually be on top of a launch vehicle rather than a launch vehicle. I was wondering if in the next round NASA would consider actually funding the commercial development or providing seed money for a launch vehicle rather than a spacecraft, and what you think about the importance of having more than one U.S. launch vehicle available during the Commercial Crew era.
See, from the program standpoint, for CCDEV-2, we did have most of our funding all went to spacecraft, and part of that rationale was we really thought spacecraft was the long pole in order to getting a complete system. We have entered into unfunded SAAs with another launch vehicle provider, as well as ATK. And so we are very interested in making sure that the launch vehicle capabilities are also there when the spacecraft is now ready to be used. So we think that we have a portfolio that addresses both launch vehicle as well as spacecraft. In terms of the next phase, I think we've made it pretty clear from the Commercial Crew Program standpoint that the next phase, we want an integrated system. We, NASA, do not want to be the integrator of a launch vehicle and spacecraft. We want industry, just as you would if you're building a new aircraft. They figure out what power plants to put on an aircraft, what engines to put on the aircraft, and also to build the aircraft itself and the passenger capabilities and all that. And then they sell that to the customers. In this case, that's sort of the approach we're looking for. We want a complete system that that industry wants to bring to us, and then we'll evaluate those different capabilities and go from there.
And just as a follow-up for Kent, the spacecraft developers in the commercial area all seem to be lining up to get on board the United Launch Alliance Atlas rocket. I think Sierra Nevada and, you know, everybody but SpaceX seems to want to fly on Atlas. Who are you guys talking to? And can you talk a little bit about whether or not anybody could launch on this vehicle?
Yeah, so Todd, the real quick answer to that is, hey, we're talking to everybody that we can, and you mentioned SpaceX, they're kind of self-contained, so that being the exception. With Liberty, you know, we showed up a little bit later than the Atlas V that's been flying. Having said that, what we've found are a couple of things. Folks are very interested in Liberty because of the value that we bring. So, you know, John had mentioned that we're competitive. We believe pricing-wise for the performance, nobody can match what Liberty can do. And particularly if you look at the reliability and safety of the systems, the heritage of our systems. So we're talking to all the folks, and we've had real good reception from the folks out there. So our goal is to be able to lift everybody and eventually be signed on with folks to lift all the spacecraft out there, because performance-wise, we can do that.
Okay, we'll take one more question here in the room before going to the phone lines, and then we'll come back to Kennedy if there are any follow-ups. So, Jason, please.
Jason Ryan with americaspace.org. I believe this question kind of follows up on what Todd was asking, and it's for Ed. There seems to be a diverse range of launch vehicles as well as spacecraft that are being developed at one time. Now, after Challenger and Columbia, we experienced a 2-year gap before we could fly astronauts again. Is what we're seeing here potentially be like if there's a similar accident on one of the, I want to say, fleet of different launch vehicles that are potentially launching astronauts, if there's a bad day, as it were, that would probably alleviate that issue, wouldn't it? Or is that what NASA is working towards, or not, to have a diverse range of launch vehicle providers to provide service to the International Space Station? Thank you.
Good strategic question, and we talk about that question quite a lot within the program and within the agency. From the Commercial Crew Program standpoint, we would like multiple providers. By the time we get the station the best way, we know how, in order to keep a capability going, would be to have multiple capabilities, in which if one capability cannot support, we can go to another one. Now that assumes that there's an adequate amount of funding in order to go do that, and the fixed government investment that the NASA would bring to the table has to be large enough to do that. At the same point, you know, in order to go in orbit is really an international kind of affair. And so we will still always have a Russian capability that I don't think we're going to say no to. I think there's also some capability that is dissimilar when you use the Russian capability as compared to a system that is focused in the United States. The goal is to have multiple capabilities in order to get to low Earth orbit. And that is our goal for the foreseeable future in CCDF2. And in the next phases, we very much want to have as many companies as we can afford, basically, from a design standpoint, which is really this phase and the next phase.
We'll now go to the phone lines. I will call your name. If you have a question, please state your affiliation and to whom you're addressing your question, or let us know if you don't have one. Mark Carreau.
Thanks, Mark Carreau for Aviation Week. Can you explain the range or number of crew that you are sized with Liberty to launch on a single mission? And also, if you might touch on whether you would consider a second launch site like in Kourou, French Guiana, in addition to Kennedy, or you're kind of all in at Kennedy, as it were?
Yes, so Mark, if you look at the size of crew, the numbers I've seen from the spacecraft are 7 is the largest number I've seen. Our performance is such that if somebody developed a little bit bigger spacecraft, I believe we could lift them into low Earth orbit. But the going number is 7, which is a great number, and it helps the business case, and particularly for the spacecraft, right, flying the crew. Bigger is better to help them close the business case. As far as launch sites, right now our concentration is on Florida just because of so much that it naturally offers and has readily available to us at minimum cost. And in the commercial world, the minimum cost just means value back to the customer for the dollars per ride. Having said that, we absolutely are looking at all the markets for Liberty, and that's really one of the advantages a launcher has over a spacecraft, is that in addition to crew, we have cargo, and then we have satellites, GTO. So we are evaluating other missions as well as launch sites.
Mark, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, Alan Boyle?
Thank you. A couple of related questions. One is, what exactly kind of work do you anticipate doing between now and March?
Other missions as well as launch sites.
And are there and is there any scenario where NASA would be paid by ATK for services rendered?
So interesting question, and the answer to the last one is yes. As a matter of fact, as we look at different trajectory analysis with the capabilities NASA has, there is absolutely a scenario where we pay NASA for services. So it's kind of interesting how the tables can maybe flip. But if you look at the expertise around the world, you realize, hey, this is where it is for some cases. The other one is, we're in between our systems design review and our preliminary design review, and we're working through those milestones as we go. So the additional design analysis cycles, for one, which is very key in getting us to the PDR, that's initially what we're working on.
Alan, did you have a follow-up?
We're between our...
There is a little bit of a follow-up. I'm just trying to digest all this. There's a little bit of crosstalk on the phone. But no, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Mike Wall?
Yeah. Hi, this is Mike Wall from Space.com. I guess I just had a brief question. Could you give an idea of what the actual impact of this is going to be on your the actual progress of this rocket? I mean, how much of a difference is it going to make in the pace of your progress? Are we talking about 6 months, 9 months development increase, or is there any way you could put any numbers on kind of how this is actually going to have an impact on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, but I don't know how to answer that. What I would say is, hey, maybe in a month, if you asked me that question, I'd have a much better idea, having evaluated kind of how we are proceeding and moving. But unfortunately, Mark, I'm struggling coming up with an answer to that one for you.
Okay. Mike, did you have a follow-up?
Sure. I guess, could you just give an example of some of the things you can do with this partnership that you couldn't have done maybe just with your own personnel?
So, one example is the Space Act agreement. We're sitting here in Florida. Having said that, so for the launching, the engineering, there's a lot of expertise there, but also this team has compromised a lot of folks from the Marshall Space Flight Center that have worked with our 5-segment motor a lot and have a lot of data at the CDR level that we will leverage as we progress towards our PDR. So, you know, again, the detailed analysis cycles that we're working towards NASA will be involved in part of that. And I'm trying to be careful here, not get NASA into trouble, because there are certain regulations on how much the government can do along with a commercial company, and at the same time, the guidance, the advice, the evaluation is absolutely critical. So, you know, Ed, I might lob that one your way.
It's all coming. See, good question. For this particular SAA, NASA will be bringing to the table a number of skill capabilities in which we will offer those to ATK and to EADS in the evaluation of their Liberty system. Those systems would include things like structural analysis, thermal analysis, vibration analysis, the hardcore engineering capabilities you need to understand how you're going to take a capability that were two separate capabilities, that is a first stage and another first stage, and put them together in a unique combination. And so NASA has those capabilities that we can bring to bear to help check what ATK and EADS have been talking about and what their homework they've been doing. If they would like us to do the homework, that is, they would like us to do the analysis, then it gets into probably an earlier question. At that point, ATK then comes forward and says they would like NASA to produce that for them, and they pay NASA for that capability. When it comes to evaluating their system, their requirements, and their detailed design, we can do that as part of the SAA, and it's no cost to ATK. We do that in-house because for NASA, it helps us understand what Liberty System is all about. And it also helps industry, specifically ATK and EADS, understand, because we're bringing those expertise to bear that have worked other systems like 5-segment and like other liquid boosters. And so we bring all that to bear, and that's what we bring to the agreement during this particular time. If we did not have an agreement and ATK wanted to come forward and talk about these particular analyses or these particular products, we would have to fit that into our overall plan of work that we would have for NASA folks over the next 6 months to a year. And we would not have an agreement by which we would give priority to this particular capability. By having an SAA, now it says NASA is stepping up, and we want to make this a priority to take our resources and use it on those specific analytical capabilities that ATK would like us to look at.
Joe Bauman.
Hi, this is Joe Bauman, Salt Lake City. I'm with Nightly News blog for the Deseret News in Salt Lake. My question is, I have a couple questions. First of all, will this affect the workforce in Utah that ATK has? And secondly, what is to be learned that we don't already know about the performance of these vehicles? Thank you.
So the first answer is, Joe, yes, in Utah, Liberty will stabilize the existing workforce. And part of what the Liberty system does, in fact, if you look at between our first stage and our second stage, there are manufacturing lines that exist today. I guess the second stage line at this point in time is busier than the first stage line, but they are existing openings. So we are just leveraging workforces that exist. And I just forgot your second question.
I'm wondering, what do you need to learn about the two different vehicles that you don't already know?
Oh, yes. So what we need to learn is, although both stages have a lot of flight time and experience, at least that they have evolved from, it has not flown as a system. So integrating a system is a lot easier said than done. So we need to learn how well a system interacts as we put it together. We need to ensure that the avionics system, the electronics that control this stack, in fact, trajectory-wise, make it go where it's supposed to go, that we fully appreciate the loads, stresses, and the environments that this vehicle goes through, as well as we're assembling it, ensure that the quality is there, that, in fact, it is going together as designed and meets all of the requirements, the safety requirements. So even though they're very mature systems, there is a lot to learn still.
Robert Perlman.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com.
Just to clarify, does this Space Act Agreement address or enable the use of Space Shuttle-flown solid rocket motor hardware, cases of the segments, for Liberty as a commercial launch vehicle? Or if not, if those components already belong to ATK, are there SRM-related hardware that belongs to NASA that this agreement affords ATK the use of?
So, great question. This Space Act Agreement actually is an agreement with the commercial crew folks, and it's independent of a similar agreement that, in fact, we do need and plan on using to leverage the RSRM hardware through a different agreement. One of those, a Space Act Agreement, to, in fact, utilize that RSRM hardware. But, again, it is not this specific Space Act Agreement.
Robert, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Dan Leone?
Yeah, hi. This will be a question for Ed, I guess. You mentioned, somebody mentioned earlier, that all of these wonderful things we're talking about today are contingent on the funding picture. Just for clarity, should I interpret that to mean that you all are planning this out, including the upcoming integrated design that's going to be the next commercial crew thing? Are you all anticipating doing your planning based on the 2012 request of $850 million? And if we come in below that, should we expect to see some of this ambition cut back?
Let's see, this is Ed. Let's see, yeah, our planning is based on the President's proposal that he gives to Congress every year. And so we look at that proposal and we build a program around that. That is not to say that we look at all kinds of information and try to figure out how we would react to various capabilities if the numbers were less or more. I would tell you, in order to get a capability to low Earth orbit by the middle of the decade, and in order to have that with competition, we need a robust budget capability in order to make commercial crew work and work safely. If we don't have enough funds, then you're going to either stretch out the schedule or you're going to make it less safe. And I can tell you, myself and the program is not against making it less safe at all. So we will make it as safe as it needs to. That means we may not get there by the middle of the decade. And if you don't get there by the middle of the decade, a normal program that takes longer than it's expected will end up costing more money, because you're keeping the workforce that you have in place around longer in order to finish the work that you have to get done. And so our plan is pretty solid, and it does match with what has been requested from the executive branch of the government. And so that's what we build our plans to. And by having a robust capability, we will be able to get something in orbit that is focused on a U.S. system by the middle of the decade.
Next on the line is Amy Donahue.
I'll pass.
Okay. Kenneth Chang.
Hi, thank you. I had two questions for Ed Mango. One is, how many NASA people will be working on this? And the second question is, does this play into a larger strategy for NASA human spaceflight? Meaning that it seems like it'd be a really smart thing to do if you're looking to reduce the cost of boosters for the Space Launch System, or maybe even a gateway for getting international cooperation. Or was this decision just simply in the context of commercial crew?
Let's see, the first question, how big is the NASA team? The detailed NASA team is approximately a dozen to 24 folks, and that will be pretty much full-time on this effort. They will then be able to reach back, and we call that our part of our Insight team. Our Insight team will probably be in the order of 50 individuals, but not all of them will be full-time as we work through the next 9 months and do this evaluation with ATK and EADS. In terms of our purpose is for commercial crew, which is to create a capability for low Earth orbit. The rules that we're trying to follow and the rules that we would like to engage on is we want an American leadership system. And by having an ATK and EADS system, we believe that that matches the requirements that we would like an American leadership system in order to go into low Earth orbit. At the same point, I can't tell you how I think it's great from a national capability for the United States to reach out to its international partners, because when you're on orbit, you know, there's no lines between the countries. It's a planet. And so let's use the best capabilities we have in the planet in order to put together a system. And I think that's what ATK and EADS is trying to propose to us. So I welcome that kind of partnership.
Kenneth, do you have a follow-up?
I had a question for Mrs. Schumacher. Has Astrium started work on air starting the Vulcan?
There is a series of activities that have gone since almost a year now, I guess, Kent, with looking at, as Ken said, adapting both the Vulcan, if I could, Ariane 5 core stage as a second stage, air start, and some other aspects of that, as well as integration with the 5-segment solid. So that discussion and some preliminary work has gone on, and has gone on in conjunction with discussions with ATK.
We'll take our last questions on the phone from Mark Matthews, if you have any. Okay, we'll come. Mark, did you have questions? Okay, we'll come back here to Kennedy to take some follow-up. Todd, I believe you had the first follow-up.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today, and I actually have two. Would this launch vehicle be capable of launching the Orion spacecraft as envisioned now? And for Ed, I was wondering if you could kind of walk us through what the next step is after CCDEV-2, how much money you anticipate having for a third round of investment, and what that whole stage would look like.
So, yeah, I'll take the first question. Right now, we left over 44,000 pounds. So, an Orion light version to go to the space station, the Todd is yes, we have the performance for that. If you want to launch the Beyond LEO version with a couple of, I'll call it tweaks, but one of our challenges on Liberty has been because we're commercial and we're trying to get to market as inexpensively and as quickly as possible, we are passing up a number of performance enhancements that right now we just don't need. But there are, from the expansion ratio on the nozzle to pulling some inert weight out of the upper stage, because we initially made it beefy just to make it much quicker and easier to get to market. The long answer is yes. We can lift Beyond LEO Orion as well with a few performance enhancements that aren't all that sophisticated.
Let's see, in terms of the overall plan, I think we did address that a couple months ago, and so I'll try to summarize it here, and we, in the near term, will be having more discussion with industry and with the public about what our future plans are for the program. CCDEV, it's a hybrid kind of approach in which CCDEV 1 and 2 we're really focused on moving forward the capabilities of partners, of contractors or of industry, moving those capabilities forward as quickly as possible, and then we would help them do that. And NASA would help with our funded SAAs, and our unfunded SAAs help with our expertise. That's these two phases. The next phase is really want to get into integrated design capabilities. We need to match a spacecraft with a launch vehicle with a ground system or a launch system, as well as with the on-orbit capability to work on low Earth orbit. Our set of requirements that are on the table today are out publicly, and folks can look at them, are really related towards our primary mission from a NASA standpoint, which is to get crew to the International Space Station by the middle of the decade. And so that's the next phase, is that integrated design phase. The following phase is our certification phase. Now we have an integrated design. Both NASA and our partners have agreed to that design. We sign up to that design. We sign up to how we're going to go do certification within that design. And then that fourth phase really is that certification process. That phase will last quite some time, because certification against the human rating certification requirements we have on the table today is quite extensive. We have to make sure the system is safe and can perform. And once it does that, then we'll enter the next phase, which is our services phase. For ISS, that services phase is, we hope to be by the middle of the decade, and will basically include at least 2 flights a year and rotations about every 6 months. You know, the Commercial Crew Program has two focuses. The first is our capability to get to the International Space Station with an American-made system or American-led system. The second is to encourage the capability of commercial systems for other purposes in low Earth orbit. And so our goal within the program is to facilitate both, with the priority being we need to figure out how to get to ISS with an American-led system as soon as we can.
Okay, Irene.
For Kent, what's the size of the ATK and EADS workforce on Liberty?
Oh gosh, if you look at the folks that we have working on Liberty and pulling on, the combined size is probably around 35 folks, 35 to 40.
Is there a business case without the commercial crew, without NASA?
There is a business case. It's not as strong, and so Liberty actually is a very good LEO vehicle for this kind of performance. So if you look at NASA between crew and cargo, Liberty fits into that very well. For an example, like Lift ATV is a transfer resupply vehicle. Liberty fits into that category as well. Having said that, there absolutely is a very strong pull for the satellite world, particularly U.S. government satellite world as well, that we believe offers a more robust business case.
Okay. Jason?
Jason Ryan for americaspace.org, and I've seen you playing second fiddle to Todd today because my question kind of comes off of his again. I noted in one illustration that Liberty was shown launching CST-100, which is by Boeing, Dream Chaser, which is by Sierra Nevada. You got your Orion Light, which is by Lockheed Martin. And I guess my question is more of a technical one. Is ATK developing like a universal mating adapter or maybe a pair of adapters that could attach different spacecrafts at the top of Liberty? Thank you.
Yeah, the quick answer is yes, absolutely, with a universal space adapter. And I think if you look, and I guess SpaceX aside, but everybody in Dream Chaser is a little bit unique as well, being the wing vehicle. But for capsules, I think the goal amongst all of us competing in commercial crew is, in fact, to have a common interface, because it's through a common interface that we can be very efficient with who fits on top without exorbitant amount of costs, to have each one as a unique design. So the answer is yes. A common interface is the design concept.
Okay, we'll take one last question from Jay.
Excuse me, Jay Barbary with NBC. Kent, you mentioned hardware here in the next few months. Is hardware on its way? What will you be doing for this first phase here, testing and carrying on? And can you envision any scenario where some European contract might be interested? I know they have Ariane doing a great job, but is there any way that possibly Europe might come into this, ESA? Fly some manned spacecraft from here?
So, yeah, I'm looking at Shu for help on that one. Yeah.
Glad to. What we're really focused on right now, Jay, is commercial crew development with NASA, U.S. market, that type of thing, and bringing that capability here. And as Ken talked to earlier, use the tremendous human spaceflight capability that's here as Kennedy and go next gen on that. So that's really the focus now.
Yeah.
So what are you going to be doing in the next few months?
Yeah, so in the next few months, right now it's paper. It is paper. So as we're working towards, once we get to critical design review, then we start on the hardware. Having said that, we do have an electronics lab, an avionics lab, and that does involve hardware. And so we do have hardware and systems running there. But they're in our laboratories, our development laboratories back in Utah and kind of other places around the nation, including EADS. As far as Florida's concerned, no, not for certainly not within the next year would there be hardware headed in here.
Jay, if I could, I'd also, one other thing I'd touch on too, because again, the focus is commercial crew development, that's right, but as Ken talked about earlier, as you talk about some of the cargo applications, for example, ATV possibilities and things like that, again, there's lots of possibilities as we get rolling on this this work in the Unfunded Space Act lets us get further along looking at all those options.
That will conclude today's NASA ATK commercial partnership announcement. For more information on NASA's Commercial Crew Program, visit www.nasa.gov/exploration/commercial. Thank you for joining us.